Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. We all want to live a long and happy life, don't we? Of course we do. And I hope that you will. The problem is we're often driven by outside forces, those day-to-day influences on our life that seem to take precedence over our health. That is, until it fails. Our guest today is Paul Broderick, and he recently had a complete change in his perspective on what it means to be healthy and how to live a good long life.
I was living what I thought was a very healthy lifestyle, very active, eating well, doing all the right things, even thinking positively, actually. And then when something hit the fan and I had a diagnosis of a 3-inch tumor and I needed to be operated upon quite soon after, I just had to figure out what the heck was going on.
Paul is the inquisitive type, and it was his curiosity that inspired the writing of a book called Cancer Mentality. He took copious notes during his diagnosis and ordeal, and he's now sharing what he learned in Cancer Mentality. The cure for cancer is in the mind. Heal your attitudes and beliefs. It's a title that requires a little bit more explanation.
What we're talking about now is placebo-nocebo. Placebo basically says it can happen if we believe it, and belief doesn't mean a very active belief, even a subliminal, subconscious belief. Nocebo is telling us that bad is going to happen, and that's what doctors are doing with such a prognosis. We can believe a diagnosis, but we don't need to choose or believe the prognosis. And that's the essence of my book, is that I discovered how to actually choose my prognosis, and anybody can do that.
The power of positive thinking. You've heard that before, but there's a lot more to it than that. The mind is far more powerful and influential than we know. Now, we're not saying that you can cure cancer with positivity, but giving into it, that's not going to help either. Just know that anything is possible, and you need to believe that. With that in mind, take a hard look at your life. That's what Paul did.
I realized by slowing my life down that I had actually been just presenting lip service to all of these wonderful metaphysical, new age spiritual ideas. And in fact, it's a lovely notion that we create our own reality. But in essence, I wasn't doing that work. I wasn't meditating. I wasn't quieting my mind. I wasn't finding peace in my life. I was striving, working, chasing. And as I write in great depth in the book, I realized that I was living in fear. Everybody's touched by cancer, heart attacks, all sorts of dramatic illness. We all know somebody or many somebodies. And so I realized that I just had to stop, rethink, reinvent myself, and actually start doing this work. And I found it to be an enormous pleasure. Not hard work at all. It's an enormous pleasure.
Stop, rethink, reinvent, and stay positive. If you stop listening now and you do just that, you'll probably be on the right track. But don't stop listening just yet, because there's much more. Paul explains what drove him to this kind of thinking.
As I healed, as my body repaired, I suppose, from the surgery, I was obviously off work. I took time out, and I really was searching for wholesome answers to this, because I asked the medical industry, I asked the surgeon, I asked the oncologist, I asked the dietitian, and they had nothing for lifestyle change for me. They had nothing to help me prevent this. And no disrespect to the medical industry, their trauma treatment is fantastic. I possibly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. But so many great teachers out there are explaining how thoughts and emotions are now proven by science to become interactive with our physiology in a good way and in a bad way.
Yes, and that is due to a few different things that are now widely known. Negative thoughts and emotions can weaken our immune system. When you're stressed, your body reacts to that stress. However, when you're upbeat and positive, well, your body reacts to that too. Plus, when you're upbeat and positive, you just make better decisions on an average daily basis. According to Paul, his problem was that he was living in a state of chronic negative emotion.
Now, we could call that stress, and I do write about this in the book. So if anything more negative than frustration, say, I am negatively affecting my physiology. These are known as diseases of the inflammation. And we have reams, lists of conditions that people present to the doctors with. Then if I'm able to switch that in any moment, instead of being annoyed or frustrated or angry or any negative emotion, whether it's momentary or chronically, if I can switch that to just a tiny few degrees in another direction, I'm allowing my body to repair. And it's natural. All of our bodies and our cells, each individual cell, it wants to live and grow. And when we get out of the way with our negative self-talk and our negative beliefs and our hatred and our dislike of this and that and judgment and criticism of all the things, then our body can naturally do what it naturally does. We could live much longer than we do.
So is the glass half full or half empty? What kind of person are you? Cancer Mentality asks a number of other questions like, what role does stress play in our overall health? How can you look at wellness differently to reclaim control of your health? What are the pros and cons of chemotherapy? Why is it so important to have a peaceful mind, to understand beliefs, to practice gratitude, and to have positive thoughts? He also shares his firm belief that healing depends on the attitude you bring to whatever you're experiencing. At least that's what worked for him.
I got out of the way. I realized that I could put into practice a few of the things that I already knew. I just looked at more detail of how to actually do that. And this book came about because I couldn't see anybody else translating these wonderful teachers and all of this information about how science is showing that our thoughts become physiological changes.
Personally, I'm one of those people who really hates to take medicine. I just don't want to be a slave to a daily regimen of pills if I don't have to. Every time I break down and go to the doctor because of something that I just can't get rid of, I'm reminded that the thing that drove me there was stress-related. Maybe I've just been lucky in that sense, but our body really does have an amazing ability to heal itself under the right circumstances. Modern science is showing more and more how we can and should take charge of our health.
I don't mean to sound all angelic or whatever about it, but it's such an awesome experience to realize that I don't need to be combative about the way I see the world. And it's nothing, our neighbours, our people in traffic, nothing needs to be argued against, fought against, conflicted. We can just free ourselves from all of it and not end up with cancer.
He says our emotions and beliefs can create our reality, and they can influence our health. Do you believe that, or are you still a bit skeptical? Because you can follow Paul's progress and learn more about him by just visiting his website. It's paulbroderick.com. There you can get his book or just read an excerpt from it, or you can also send him an email, because I'm sure he'd love to hear from you.
Look, I just know that it touches everybody. This material just touches people every time I talk about it. So I'm excited to be part of any individual's change.
Cancer Mentality. The cure for cancer is in the mind. Heal your attitudes and beliefs by Paul Broderick. There are links to his site and other places to get the book in the show's description. And that will do it for this edition of Newsgram from webtalkradio.com.